Picture a situation where your 32-ton war machine transforms from a terrifying weapon into a sitting duck in the middle of an open field. June 1944. Guards Lieutenant Sokolov's crew finds themselves in a trap from which there is no escaping alive. They had a choice: blow up the tank and escape through the forest to save their own lives, or accept a battle that defied all laws of physics and common sense. In this video, you will learn how 4 deafened, shell-shocked men turned a pile of metal into an impregnable fortress using garbage and sheer will. Why did they start burying their own tank while the Wehrmacht elite was closing in on them? And what terrible order from headquarters forced them to stay when even the armor began to melt from the hits? Watch to the end to see how a single T-34 used a knocked-out German Tiger as a human shield, and what is actually hidden beneath the layers of cheap paint on the roadside monument. June 1944. Belarus. The earth here trembles not from thunderstorms, but from the continuous roar of thousands of engines. Operation Bagration is grinding down the German Army Group Center with the methodical precision of a giant meat grinder. A T-34-85 tank, under the command of Guards Lieutenant Sokolov, is tearing forward along a dirt road washed out by rains. This is no longer a march. It is a race against death. 32 tons of steel are flying at 30 miles per hour, spraying mud. The 12-cylinder V234 diesel engine is roaring at its limit, devouring diesel and air by the cubic meter. Inside the turret, there is a din that even a tightly pressed headset cannot drown out. The fan hums strainingly, trying to pull out the heavy smell of heated oil, sweat, and gunpowder fumes. The crew's task is simple and terrible in its categorical nature: cut off the retreat routes. Ahead, behind a veil of rain, lies a strategically important crossroads. Whoever controls the crossroads controls the initiative. Sokolov is glued to the periscope. The world outside is blurred and gray. Flashes of distant explosions, black skeletons of trees, a gray, low sky pressing down on the turret hatches. Adrenaline pounds in his temples, forcing his heart to work in the rhythm of the engine. Gunner Orlov's hands are on the traverse wheels, his fingers white from tension. Each of them right now is not a human being, but a functional appendage of the machine, a single organism honed for destruction. Impact! The world turns upside down instantly, without warning. A flash below, to the right of the direction of travel, blinds them even through the armor. An anti-tank mine buried in the thick Belarusian clay knows no pity and never misses. 13 pounds of TNT detonate in a fraction of a second. The monstrous energy of the explosion tosses the multi-ton machine into the air like an empty tin can. The screech of tearing metal drowns out the roar of the engine and the screams of men. It is a sound impossible to forget, the sound of a steel beast's spine snapping. The tank noses down, its underbelly grinding against stones, skids on inertia for another 10 yards, and freezes. Silence. A dead, ringing silence that is more terrifying than any roar. Inside the fighting compartment, there is chaos. The impact against the armor knocks the air out of their lungs. Diaphragms spasm, making it impossible to inhale. Heads buzz as if struck by a sledgehammer. There is a thin, nasty ringing in their ears, a sign of severe concussion. Blood from noses floods lips, salty and warm, a common occurrence with mine blasts. This isn't fear. Fear is a complex emotion. It requires time. Right now, only raw physiology is at work. The body takes inventory. Are the arms intact? Can the legs be felt? Do the eyes see? The driver-mechanic Petrov slams his chest against the control levers, breaking ribs, but does not lose consciousness. His hands convulsively grip the metal that has ceased to obey. Gunner Orlov slides down the breech of the gun, shaking his head, trying to regain focus. The 9R radio comes alive through the crackle of static. The voice from headquarters sounds dry, lifeless, like the voice of an automaton. "Falcon, this is 1. Report the situation." Sokolov finds the talk button with difficulty. His tongue does not obey. There is a taste of copper in his mouth. 1, this is Falcon. Hit a mine. Running gear destroyed. Stopped at the crossroads. Grid square 1480. The pause on the air lasts an eternity. Back at headquarters, they are moving a pencil across a map, deciding their fate. The answer comes cold as a verdict. "Falcon, listen to your combat order. Hold the crossroads. Do not let the Germans pass. At any cost. Reinforcements are coming." The connection cuts off. The phrase, "someday," was not spoken, but it hung in the stale air of the fighting compartment. No words of support. No promises of imminent evacuation. Only the dry coordinates of a grid square they were ordered to turn into a mass grave. Theirs or the enemy's, those were just details. Sokolov wipes the blood from his face with the sleeve of his tunic. His movements are sharp, chopped. Reflection is turned off. He jerks the turret hatch open. Cold rain hits his face, washing away the soot and bringing him to his senses. "Petrov, inspect the damage. Move it!" The driver's hatch opens with a clang. Petrov, grimacing from the pain in his chest, climbs out directly into the mud. The sludge immediately floods his boots and soaks his trousers. He falls to his knees in front of the right track. The picture is depressing. The explosion tore out a chunk of the track link. Steel tracks, each weighing dozens of pounds, have turned into twisted crumbs. A road wheel is turned inside out, exposing the Christie suspension springs. The balance arm snapped like a dry twig. The drive sprocket is deformed. Petrov runs his hand over the torn metal. Grease mixes with blood on his fingers. He raises his head. The mechanic's eyes are empty. In them is only the professional anguish of a man who understands. The machine cannot be saved. "Well?" Sokolov's voice from above sounds muffled. "We threw a shoe, Commander. Completely. The road wheel is sheared off. The idler is smashed. There's nothing to mount the track on. We're bellied out." The dialogue is short, like a gunshot. "Can mobility be restored?" "No. We need a repair truck, welding and parts. In field conditions, no chance." Petrov spits into the mud. It is a verdict. The T-34, created for maneuver, for flanking movements, for rapid dashes, has turned into a pile of immobile metal weighing 32,000 kilograms. The rain intensifies. Water drums on the armor, creating a monotonous rhythm. Around them is emptiness. The broken road leads into a gray mist. To the left are the remains of a burned-out farmstead. To the right, a sparse forest. They are alone. Absolutely alone in the center of a vast, hostile space. The feeling of a trap covers them instantly, as if the walls of an invisible cell slammed shut. The crossroads is an open palm, and they are right in the center of it, like a target for a sniper. Sokolov looks at his men. The loader, Belov, the youngest, sits with his knees pulled up to his chest, staring at a single point. Orlov checks the sights, mechanically wiping the optics with a rag. Petrov, limping, climbs back into the hatch. The lieutenant understands. The point of no return is arriving now. The past, where there was speed, hope for a breakthrough, and battalion support, has been cut off by the explosion. The future has shrunk to the size of the crossroads and an ammo load of 56 rounds. Listen to my command. Sokolov's voice becomes hard, metallic. We aren't going anywhere. The tank is immobilized, but the gun is intact. The machine guns are intact. 45 millimeters of armor at a 60-degree angle. He pauses, peering into the faces of the crew. We are no longer tankers. We are a garrison. We are now a pillbox, a permanent firing point. Remember that. If we cannot maneuver, we will become part of this earth. The words fall heavily, driving reality into their consciousness. This is the end of illusions. Maneuver is impossible. Retreat is impossible. Ahead lies the 9th Army of the Wehrmacht, retreating, angry, a rat cornered, which will tear through this crossroads to the west. And in its path stands only one crippled tank and 4 deafened men.
Orlov, Belov, inventory the shells. Separate armor-piercing and high-explosive. Petrov, shut off fuel valves, check batteries. Prepare for all-around defense. Sokolov lowers himself into the commander's cupola. The smell of burnt diesel is replaced by the smell of wet earth penetrating through the open hatches. The silence ends. Somewhere in the distance, behind the veil of rain, a rumble begins to grow. An alien rumble. The roar of foreign engines is still far away. It hangs over the horizon as a low, anxious background noise. But time has already begun its relentless countdown. Guards Lieutenant Sokolov jumps from the armor into the squelching sludge. His boots instantly sink into the mud up to his ankles. The rain does not stop for a second, turning the battlefield into a gray, blurry mess. There is no place for maneuver warfare tactics here now.
The Armored Forces Manual is written for functional machines capable of changing positions, firing on the move, and evading strikes. For an immobile tank, there is only one rule: engineering the position. Or, to call things by their proper names, self-burial. Shovels out! Sokolov's command is not loud, but it cuts through the noise of the rain. We dig in. We turn the machine into a hill, so that not a single German bastard realizes it's a tank until they catch a shell with their forehead. The crew unpacks the entrenching tools: shovels, crowbars, a pickaxe. Ordinary carpentry tools on which their lives now depend more than on the thickness of the frontal armor. The hardest, dirtiest, and most thankless work in war begins. Infantry digs trenches for themselves. Tankers must bury 32 tons of metal into the ground. Orlov, Belov, dirt under the tracks. Cover the road wheels, Sokolov shouts, pointing to the vulnerable running gear.
Petrov, take the axe. Drag everything that burns and doesn't burn from that shed over there.
The work proceeds at a frantic pace. The men gasp for air, gulping down damp air mixed with the smell of rotting grass and wet greatcoats. The soil here is heavy, viscous, greasy clay saturated with water. Every dig of the shovel requires the effort of the entire body. The clay sticks to the metal in heavy clumps, slides off, resists. This isn't earthwork. It is a battle with geology. Petrov, limping, drags rotten logs from the shed destroyed by artillery. The wood is wet, slippery, covered in moss. The logs are laid along the sides, creating a frame for a breastwork. Earth is thrown on top of them, layer by layer, inch by inch. The silhouette of the formidable war machine begins to blur, losing its predatory outlines. Hands are quickly rubbed raw and bloody. Blisters burst, mixing with mud and rust, but no one stops even for a second. Pain is a signal that you are still alive. If you stop now, in an hour you will stop feeling anything. Forever. Faster! Pilot on the transmission! Belov wheezes, throwing another lump of clay onto the tank's stern. Don't yell, save your strength! Orlov snaps back, but doesn't slow his pace. His face is gray with fatigue. Streams of rain mixed with sweat run down his cheeks. In a ditch by the road, they find the skeleton of a wrecked truck. A rusty frame, pieces of the sides, a twisted cab. It all goes into action. Sheets of iron, pieces of canvas, some boards, all become elements of camouflage. This is fortification made of trash and will. The task is to break the geometry. German gunners are trained to recognize the straight lines and characteristic angles of a T-34. They need to give them a shapeless pile of junk, an earthen bump that arouses no suspicion. After an hour of grueling labor, the tank disappears. In its place grows a dirty, absurd hill, from which, like the stinger of a giant insect, sticks the barrel of an .85 caliber gun. Even the muzzle brake is wrapped in dirty rags, so the wet metal doesn't glint. The tank is no longer a machine. It has grown into the ground, become an extension of the Belarusian landscape. It is no longer technology. It is a concrete pillbox of steel and flesh. Engineering defense is the physics of survival. The sloped armor of the 34 is, in itself, a brilliant solution that increases the probability of a ricochet. But now that the hull is banked with earth and logs, a shell will have to overcome a yard of viscous clay and wood before it touches steel. Earth absorbs kinetic energy, diffuses the cumulative jet, and trips fuses. The crew creates additional armor for themselves with their own hands, which was not issued at the factory. Sokolov walks around the position from the front. He looks at their handiwork with the critical eye of a perfectionist killer. From 50 yards away, the tank is almost invisible against the background of the gray forest and the soaked field. Only the black hole of the barrel looks straight into the soul of anyone who risks walking down this road. "It'll do," the lieutenant exhales. "You want to live, you'll twist yourself into a pretzel." They descend into the hatches. Inside the tank, it now seems even tighter than before, as if tons of earth piled outside are pressing on the walls of the fighting compartment, compressing the space. The air is heavy, stale. It smells of wet foot wraps, heated metal, and gun grease. This smell eats into the skin, into the hair, into the lungs. "Petrov, batteries?" Sokolov asks, putting on his headset. "Normal, Commander. Enough light. Electric trigger works." "Orlov, sector of fire." "Clear. I see the road to the turn. Direct fire range 800 meters. Landmarks: Burnt Elm, 400. Rock, 200. The men collapse into their seats, breathing heavily. Muscles buzz. Hands tremble from overexertion. This isn't the tremor of fear. It is the vibration of over-tightened steel cables. They did everything they could. They changed the landscape to suit their task. They dug themselves not a grave, but a full-profile trench. The difference between the first and the second is determined only by the outcome of the battle. In the ensuing silence, raindrops can be heard tapping on the open hatch, which Sokolov is in no hurry to batten down before the battle begins. The roar of engines on the horizon becomes louder. It disintegrates into separate sounds. The clatter of tracks, the straining howl of Maybach engines, foreign, barking speech. The enemy is close. "Attention, crew!" Sokolov's voice on the intercom sounds absolutely calm, as if he were giving a lecture in a classroom. "Rest. Breathe evenly. Calm your pulse. The first target will appear in 5 to 10 minutes. Fire only on command. Without my command, don't even breathe in the direction of the site." They wait. 4 people in an iron box, buried in mud in the middle of a huge war. Engineers of their own fate, ready to take a test of durability. The rain stops as suddenly as it began. The drum roll on the armor is replaced by the rare, heavy splashes of the last drops. The world around the crossroads plunges into a viscous, cottony silence. But this silence is deceptive. There is no peace in it, only the accumulation of electricity before the discharge. Inside the tank, only the heavy breathing of 4 men and the quiet hum of the radio converter can be heard. The air becomes clearer. The gray veil falls away, revealing the road in all its unsightly nakedness. And then they appear. From around the bend, splashing puddles, crawls the German vanguard. 3 Hanomag armored personnel carriers, Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251,
Angular, predatory machines painted the dirty gray color of a field mouse.
They move confidently, arrogantly, not expecting to meet resistance in this god-forsaken sector. In the back, closely pressed against each other, sits the infantry. Helmets, coat collars, carbine barrels. From a distance of 1/3 of a mile, they look like a faceless gray mass.
Target in sight.
Gunner Orlov's voice in the headset sounds hoarse but calm.
3 boxes. Infantry on board.
Commander? A short question from Loader Belov. In his hands already lies a high-explosive fragmentation shell, O-365. 35 pounds of death, ready to take its place in the breach.
Wait!
Sokolov's order is cold as ice.
Let them get closer. We need a sure thing. Load HE.
The breech block swallows the shell with a clang. The wedge rises, locking the barrel channel. Now it is a closed system. The pressure inside it at the moment of firing will jump to 2,500 atmospheres. Orlov is glued to the brow pad of the TSH-16 sight. The world for him has narrowed to a circle with angular scales. He rotates the horizontal traverse wheel smoothly, without jerks, tracking the lead vehicle. The electric drive is turned off, so the whir of the motor doesn't give away the position ahead of time. Only manual work. The gears of the turret rotation mechanism creak quietly, picking through the teeth of the turret ring. The distance shrinks. 500 meters. 400. In the sight, the faces of the soldiers can already be distinguished. Someone is smoking, shielding the light with a palm. An officer in the front vehicle is pointing something out to the driver. They are driving to die, but they don't know it yet. For the crew of the T-34, these are not people. These are targets. Biological objects subject to elimination according to the combat manual. 300, whispers Orlov. The crosshairs lie exactly on the frontal plate of the lead armored personnel carrier. The armor there is thin, only 14 millimeters. For an .85 caliber, it's paper. The shell won't even notice the obstacle. The fuse will trigger inside, turning the troop compartment into a meat grinder. 200 meters, states Sokolov. Nerves are stretched like piano strings ready to snap. Driver Petrov's hands are on the DT machine gun in the frontal hull plate. He also sees the enemy through the narrow slit of the periscope. His index finger lies on the trigger, taking up the slack.
Fire!
The word flies out of Sokolov's mouth sharply, like the crack of a whip. The gunner pulls the trigger. A small earthquake occurs inside the tank. The gun recoils, taking up 12 inches of recoil, and returns forcibly into battery. The roar of the shot in the confined space hits the ears despite the headsets. Gunpowder gases burst into the turret in a bluish cloud, instantly stinging the eyes. The ring of the spent casing falling to the floor drowns in the general roar. The shell covers 200 meters in a quarter of a second. Impact. The lead Hanomag doesn't just explode, it is torn apart from the inside. The detonation of almost 2 pounds of explosives in the cramped troop compartment creates overpressure incompatible with the integrity of matter. The armored personnel carrier flares up like a matchbox doused in gasoline. Pieces of metal, wheels, and human bodies fly outward in a fan. Inertia drags the burning skeleton another few yards forward, leaving a trail of black, oily smoke.
Hit!
yells Orlov, already spinning the wheel, searching for the second target. Panic. The German formation breaks instantly. The two remaining APCs brake sharply, trying to drive into the ditch, turn around, get out of the kill zone. Infantry spills over the sides like peas from a torn sack. Gray figures dart along the road, fall into the mud, try to crawl. "Machine guns!" commands Sokolov. "Cut down the infantry! Don't let them pin down!" The tank comes alive with fire. Now both Degtyaryov tank machine guns are working, the coaxial with the cannon and the bow gunners. Long, vicious bursts stitch through space. Tracers draw fiery lines in the damp air. This is no longer a battle. It is an execution. 7.62 millimeter bullets mow down people trying to find cover in roadside ditches. Bodies jerk and freeze, turning into shapeless mounds against the background of brown clay. The second Hanomag gets stuck in the mud while attempting a U-turn. The driver panicked and gunned it, and the tracks dug into the soft ground. It becomes a perfect target. "Armor piercing!" commands Sokolov, although HE would have been enough for such a target. But in the heat of battle, reliability is more important than economy.
Ready!
Screams Belov, shoving a solid shot into the breach. Shot. The shell hits the side of the armored personnel carrier in the engine area. The vehicle jerks. A column of flame erupts from the engine compartment. The crew doesn't even have time to jump out. The third APC manages to hide behind the smokescreen of its burning comrades and reverses around the bend. The shooting dies down as abruptly as it began. Two smoking pyres remain on the road. The smell of burnt rubber, flesh, and explosives reaches even the buttoned-up tank. Bodies lie in the ditches and on the asphalt. Some are moving, but no one will finish them off. Ammo must be conserved. A heavy fog from gunpowder gases hangs inside the turret. The fan howls, straining, but can't keep up. The crew coughs, wiping tearing eyes. Orlov's hands tremble with a fine tremor, adrenaline withdrawal. It was a reconnaissance in force, a stress test. The Germans just poked a finger into the dark and ran into a steel spike.
"Stow the euphoria," Sokolov's voice returns the men to reality. "Those were just messengers. They will now report that there is an ambush here. Next won't be trucks with infantry."
The lieutenant looks through the periscope at the burning skeletons. Round one is theirs. But this was just a warm-up before the real fight. The main forces of the Ninth Army are somewhere out there, behind the forest, and they are already turning their heavy barrels toward the cursed crossroads. "Belov, throw the casings out the hatch. Ventilate the fighting compartment. Prepare to repel a heavy armor attack." Silence returns, but now it smells of burning and blood. The expectation of death has been replaced by the taste of first blood, and this taste, metallic, salty, and terrible, will now haunt them to the very end. The respite turned out to be deceptive, like the calm before a hurricane. The Germans came to their senses. They weren't idiots. They were professionals of war who understood. Sitting at the crossroads is not a random roadblock, but a serious firing point. And they turned on their main argument, artillery. The earth around the tank began to boil. First came the sound, a growing, vibrating whistle that makes the stomach go cold. Then the world split apart. 105mm howitzer shells began to plow grid square 1480 with German pedantry. Explosions landed in a checkerboard pattern, tightening the ring around the lonely hill. Inside the tank, it felt like being inside a giant bell being struck by a blacksmith's hammer. The armor hummed, vibrated, transmitting tremors directly into the crew's bones. Welds cracked, experiencing extreme loads. Dust that had accumulated in cracks for ages flew into the air, clogging nostrils. "Hatches battened down!" Sokolov's scream drowned in another close explosion. Shrapnel drummed on the turret like steel hail. The earth rose in fountains, showering the periscopes with wet clay. But their calculation was correct. The tank, grown into the ground and lined with logs, had become too difficult a target for indirect fire. Shells tore the ground around, sheared trees, but a direct hit on the low silhouette did not happen. The artillery barrage cut off as abruptly as it began. It was a signal. "Stations!" commanded Sokolov, pressing against the observation device. "Here they come!" From the gray veil mixed with the smoke of explosions, two angular shadows crawled onto the road. Panzerkampfwagen 4. Late Model 4s with long-barreled 75mm guns and side skirts. A serious opponent. Their guns are capable of punching through the front of a 34 from a kilometer away if they hit lucky. They moved cautiously, covering themselves with the smoke from the burning APCs. Turrets rotated, searching for a target. Long barrels with muzzle brakes prowled predatorily from side to side. Inside the Soviet tank, time compressed into a tight spring. The steel rhythm of the crew's work switched on, drowning out the noise of blood in their ears. There were no longer personalities, names, or ranks here. There was only function. "Armor piercing!" Sokolov's voice is devoid of intonation. It is simply data input. "Target, right 1, distance 400, beneath the turret ring." "Armor piercing up!" barked Loader Belov. His movements were honed to automatism. Left hand opens the ammo rack lock. Right hand jerks out the 35-pound unitary round UBR 365. Body turn. The heavy shell enters the breech with a clang. Fist hits the rammer. The breech wedge locks the barrel with a dry, metallic click. "Ready!" "Shot!" exhales Orlov. The gunner sees nothing but the crosshairs of the sight. His world has narrowed to the black silhouette of the German tank. He accounts for lead, corrects for wind, although at such a distance it is almost unimportant. Finger smoothly presses the electric trigger. The roar of the 85 caliber shot in the enclosed volume hits the eardrums. The breech, flying back, ejects the smoking casing. It falls to the floor of the fighting compartment with a dull ring, joining the others. Hit. The shell strikes the fore at the junction of the hull and turret. Sparks fly in a sheaf. The German tank jerks, stops, but does not burn. The armor held, or the shell ricocheted. "Didn't penetrate," states Sokolov. "Again, armor piercing, tempo." The second German tank notices the flash. Its turret begins to turn toward them slowly. Too slowly for a living creature, but frighteningly fast for a machine. A duel of reactions begins. Whoever reloads first will live. Now everything depends on Belov. The loader works like the piston of an overheated engine. Sweat floods his eyes, acidic sting on the skin, tunic stuck to his back. It becomes impossible to breathe in the turret. The fan howls strainingly, but gunpowder gases accumulate faster than it can extract them. The air is bluish, dense, sweetish to the taste. Carbon monoxide. A gas chamber. Throat tickles, nausea rolls in, but stopping is impossible. "Ready!" wheezes Belov, shoving the next shell in. Seconds stretch into eternity. Orlov corrects the aim. "Fire!" The second shell finds a vulnerable spot. It punches through the vertical frontal plate of the German tank, slightly to the left of the driver's vision slit. Flash. A second later, a pillar of fire erupts from the hatches of the fore. The ammunition detonated. The turret, weighing several tons, is torn from the ring and thrown into the ditch. The remaining German tank manages to fire. The impact on the T-34 armor is terrible. The shell grazes the cheek of the turret, ricocheting. Scale showers down inside. The sound is as if a head was shoved into a bell. Blood spurted from Sokolov's nose, his vision darkened. "Alive?" he screams, not hearing his own voice. "Alive," Orlov responds, shaking his head. "Sight is intact. Armor piercing. Finish the bastard." Belov, staggering from fumes and concussion, is already pulling the next shell. His hands, in oil and soot, slide on the casing, but fingers dig into the metal with a death grip. Back muscles are stone. He feels no fatigue. The organism works on pure adrenaline and an animal desire to survive. The German tries to back up, get behind the smoke of the burning comrade. But he exposed his side. Mistake. Fatal mistake. "Fire!" The third shot puts a period on it. The armor-piercing slug stitches through the side of the four in the area of the engine compartment. The engine flares up. The tank jerks in a death throw and freezes. The track continues to rotate, tearing up chunks of turf until fire engulfs the entire machine.
"Cease fire,"
exhales Sokolov. "Gun on safety." Two burning pyres now reliably block the road. Passage is blocked by tons of red-hot iron. Inside the turret, there is hellish heat. Heat radiates from the breach like from a stove. The floor is strewn with hot casings, on which boots roll. The crew greedily gulps the poisoned air. Faces are black with soot, with white tracks from sweat. Hands tremble, not from fear, but from extreme physical exertion. Belov slides down the wall of the ammo rack, trying to recover his breath. His chest heaves. He just tossed nearly 200 pounds of lethal cargo by hand in a minute. "Water," he wheezes. Sokolov hands him a canteen. The water is warm, tastes of metal, but now it seems like nectar. "Good job," the lieutenant says quietly. "We washed the German." But he knows. This was only the vanguard of the main forces. The main caliber is still ahead. The tank has turned into a gas chamber. The crew is on the verge of heat stroke. But the heart of the machine, the ZIS S-53 cannon, is functional, and the breech frame shines with grease, ready to accept the next shell. The steel rhythm of battle is just gaining momentum. The earth began to tremble before the sound appeared. It wasn't that small, angry vibration from medium tanks that the crew had already learned to ignore. It was a heavy, tectonic tremor transmitted through the tracks directly into the spine. In Gunner Orlov's sight, covered in a web of fine cracks, the gray background of rain and forest suddenly darkened. From behind the smoke screen, slowly and inevitably, floated a silhouette that any Soviet tanker recognized by an instinctive clenching of the stomach. Panzerkampfwagen 6, Tiger. 57 tons of gloomy Teutonic genius. Right angles, vertical armor, interleaved suspension. And most importantly, the long barrel of the 88mm KWK-36 gun, crowned with a massive muzzle brake. This gun left no chances. At a distance of a kilometer, it stitched through a 34 cleanly, along with the engine and transmission. Here, at pistol shot range, a hit meant instant annihilation. Sokolov felt the cold needle of fear prick under his heart, but it immediately dissolved in the icy rage of a professional. "Tiger!" The lieutenant's voice on the intercom sounded like grinding metal. "Straight ahead, distance 300. The German gunner was a master. He didn't waste time stopping. The Tiger fired on the move. Flash. The impact was of such force that the 32-ton machine was thrown back, pressing its stern into the earthen breastwork. Sound disappeared. The world collapsed into a blindingly white flash of pain. It was like the crew was shoved inside a huge church bell, and then it was struck by a blacksmith's hammer with all his might. Ricochet. The shell hit the gun mantlet, slid along the hardened steel, leaving a deep furrow, and went into the sky, spinning with a wild howl. But the kinetic energy of the impact didn't disappear. It passed through the armor as a shockwave. Sokolov felt something warm and salty gush from his nose and ears. His eardrums seemed to burst. Red circles danced in his eyes. Observation devices on the right side flew out of their sockets, shattering into glass crumbs. "Report!" he screamed, not hearing himself. The sound of his own voice reached him as if through a thickness of water. "Alive," moaned Orlov. He slid off the seat, holding his head. The gunner received a severe concussion, but instinctively reached back for the flywheels. "Belov!" "Normal," croaked the loader. His face was white as chalk. A trickle of blood flowed from his mouth. He bit his tongue on impact. Sokolov glued himself to the commander's panorama. The optics cracked, the image doubled, but he saw the main thing. The Tiger continued to move. It was intact. Its frontal armor, 100 millimeters of chrome nickel steel, was invulnerable to their gun even from this distance. To hit the front meant simply scratching the paint. It is a duel of David and Goliath. Only David has no sling, and Goliath has a Zeiss optical sight. "Armor piercing!" commanded Sokolov. "Can't penetrate the front. Hit the running gear, knock off the track, otherwise we're finished." It was the only correct decision. Turn the mobile fortress into an immobile target. Deprive the enemy of maneuver. Belov, staggering like a drunk, lifted another shell from the floor. The casing slipped from bloodied hands, clinked against metal, but he intercepted it at the very breach. "Ready?" Orlov, squinting, tried to catch the Tiger's drive sprocket in the crosshairs of the broken sight. His hands shook, but not from fear, but from extreme muscle overexertion. The shockwave knocked off the settings. All mechanisms moved tightly. "Come on, you bastard," he whispered with smashed lips. The Tiger was turning its turret. Its black muzzle, looking like the pupil of death, looked straight at the forehead of the 34. Seconds stretched into infinity. One could hear the clock ticking on the dashboard, oil dripping from a punctured pipe. Belov breathing heavily. "Shot!" Orlov pulled the trigger a moment before the German fired. The 85 shell, accelerated to a speed of 900 meters per second, hit exactly under the front fender of the Tiger, in the idler wheel. The steel pin of the track link burst with a dry crack that was audible even through the armor. The heavy, wide track flew off the rollers like a snake, spreading lifelessly in the mud. Physics came into its own. The multi-ton behemoth, moving at speed, continued moving on one track by inertia. The tank turned sharply, jerkily sideways. It skidded on the slippery clay. The Tiger exposed its side, the less protected, vulnerable side with vertical armor. The German shot went wide. The shell passed a yard over Sokolov's turret, shearing off the top of a pine tree behind. The enemy was betrayed by the inertia of the turn. "Got him!" yelled Orlov in a wild, inhuman voice. "De-shoot him!" "Don't stop!" barked Sokolov. "Finish him! Under the turret! Jam him!" Belov had already rammed a new shell. Now it was a race for survival. The Tiger crew wasn't sleeping either. The turret rotated, trying to catch the Soviet tank in the sight. But the hull turn played a cruel joke on them. Now they had to turn the gun almost 90 degrees. Sokolov had seconds. "Fire!" The shell hit the junction of the hull and turret, right in the turret ring. Sparks, the screech of tearing metal. No explosion followed, but the Tiger's turret jerked and froze in an unnatural position, tilting slightly. Jammed. Shrapnel from the shell and armor hit the rotation mechanism, welding it tightly into a single monolith. The fearsome predator turned into a pile of useless metal. It could still growl with its engine, could shoot from machine guns, but its main fang was torn out.
"Reverse!"
exhaled Sokolov.
"Petrov, kill the engine! Listen to the airwaves!"
In the ensuing silence, one could hear the German crew trying to open the hatches, but they didn't climb out. The Tiger remained in place, smoking with bluish smoke. It became a huge iron pillbox blocking the road for its own troops. Inside the T-34, it smelled of blood and ozone. Orlov lowered his head onto the brow pad of the sight without strength. Blood dripped from his nose, flooding the eyepieces. But he was smiling. Smiling, the terrible, gap-toothed smile of a man who looked into the eyes of death and made it blink first. Hands trembled so much that Sokolov could barely hold the canteen. He took a sip. The water tasted bitter. "We're living, guys," he said quietly. "Living. For now." But he knew that this "for now" was a very shaky concept. Ammo was melting away. Strength was running out. And behind the back of the knocked-out Tiger, the roar of new engines could already be heard. War wasn't going to give them a lunch break. It demanded the continuation of the banquet, and they remained the main dish on this table. Twilight descends on the Belarusian land heavily, like a wet greatcoat. The contours of the forest blur, turning into a black wall, and this is the most terrible time for a tanker. By day you are a hunter encased in armor. At night you are a blind kitten in an iron barrel on which someone is knocking from the outside. The rain stopped, but the humidity is such that it seems like you are breathing water. Inside the T-34-85, the atmosphere has thickened to the limit. The air can be cut with a knife. In it hangs a cocktail of smells that would turn an unprepared person inside out in a second. The acrid burning of cordite, the sweetish spirit of hydraulic fluid, the sour smell of sweaty uniforms, urine, climbing out is death, and the heavy, metallic smell of blood. Guards Lieutenant Sokolov conducts an ammo inventory. He does this by touch, fingers sorting through the empty slots of the ammo rack. Each emptiness responds with cold in the stomach. Survival statistics are relentless. "Report!" The commander's voice sounds muffled, vocal cords torn by screaming and fumes. 5 armor-piercing, Belov responds from the darkness. 3 high-explosive, and half a disc for the coaxial. 8 shells. 8 shots separate them from eternity. 56 standard rounds flew into nowhere, turning into burning metal on the road. The logistics of war are cruel. You live exactly as long as you have something to snap back with. The Germans changed tactics. They realized that the frontal armor attack choked. The Tiger, standing as a monument to itself in the middle of the road, reliably blocked the line of fire for the other tanks. Now a different war begins. Quiet. Sneaky. Infantry war against a blind machine. "Listen!" hisses Sokolov. "Everyone listen!" The engine is off. In absolute silence, one can hear the metal cooling, crackling, and clicking. But through these sounds, another breaks through. A rustle. The slapping of boots on mud. The clinking of gear. They are crawling. Grenadiers with Panzerfausts, weapons of desperation and guaranteed death. Panzerfaust 60. A tube with a shaped charge grenade capable of burning through 200 millimeters of armor. They don't need to aim from afar. They need to crawl to 30 yards and pull the trigger. A jet of superheated gases will burst inside, instantly raising the temperature to thousands of degrees and pressure to hundreds of atmospheres. The crew won't even have time to realize they died.
Hatches open, commands Sokolov. Personal weapons ready. Keep grenades at hand.
Now the defense rests not on the power of the .85 caliber, but on PPSH submachine guns and F1 grenades. The crew turns into infantry, locked in a steel box. Orlov opens his hatch a palm's width. Cold night air immediately bursts into the crack. Somewhere very close, in the dead zone, German speech is heard.
Hans, hier ist er!
Orlov sticks the barrel of the submachine gun into the crack and gives a short burst blindly, fanning. In response, a sheaf of sparks flies from the darkness. Bullets click on the armor like hail on a tin roof.
Left! Flanking left!
He screams, changing the magazine. Close combat begins. Distance, 5 to 10 yards. The tank is blind, but it bites. Sokolov throws a lemon grenade through the commander's hatch. The explosion of the grenade in the liquid mud sounds like a squelching clap. Someone's scream, turning into gurgling. To the right, from the side of the ditch, a bright light flares up. A shot from a Panzerfaust. A fiery comet sweeps inches from the turret, dousing the armor in heat. Miss. The shooter hurried. Nerves failed.
Petrov, bowgun!
Yells Sokolov. Driver-mechanic Petrov is glued to his DT machine gun. He doesn't see the enemy. He sees only the flashes of shots. He hits with short, angry bursts, cutting off the infantry from the sides. Suddenly a ringing blow, unlike a ricochet, shakes the frontal plate. A thin, nasty screech of metal. A shard or an armor-piercing bullet finds a microscopic crack in the mechanic's vision device. Petrov jerks, throwing himself back against the seat backrest. His hands slide off the machine gun.
Petya!
Screams Bielov, rushing to him. In the dim light of the emergency bulb, dark blood is seen flowing down the mechanic's face. A shard cut his eyebrow and clipped his shoulder. His tunic instantly gets wet. But Petrov opens his eyes. There is no panic in them, only a murky veil of pain and animal anger. "As you were," he wheezes, pushing away the loader's hand. "I'll do it myself. Give me ammo." He can't shoot aimed fire. Blood floods his right eye. But he can do what war requires of him: ensure the uninterrupted supply of death. Petrov, clenching his teeth so hard his jaw muscles creak, takes a new disc for the machine gun. His fingers slide from blood. Movements have become slow, but he continues to load cartridges into spare discs. Click, click, click. This is the rhythm of his life. While he loads the magazine, he is alive. Claustrophobia rolls in waves. The walls of the tank, which previously seemed like protection, now press, squeezing around the throat. You want to open the hatch, breathe deeply, jump out of this iron grave. But outside is death. Inside is life, albeit like this, stifling, stinking, bloodied. There is no water. The last drops from Sokolov's canteen were drunk an hour ago. Tongues are swollen and stuck to the roof of the mouth. Dehydration makes the blood thick. The heart works intermittently. A bell tolls in the temples. Every sip of stale air is a struggle. Lungs burn. Carbon dioxide accumulates below, at the feet, where the wounded Petrov sits. "Endure," whispers Sokolov, reloading his TT pistol. "Endure, men. The night isn't eternal." They are not poster heroes. They are tormented, dirty, deafened people driven into a corner. They have no beautiful words, only the desire not to croak for nothing. Another wave of infantry comes closer. Gun stocks can be heard knocking on the armor. Germans are trying to climb onto the engine deck. "On the roof!" yells Bilov. He pulls the pin from a grenade, waits 2 seconds, a deadly risk, and opens the loader's hatch just enough to stick his hand out. The grenade rolls down the sloped armor of the turret onto the transmission. Explosion. Screams of the wounded, stamping of feet jumping into the mud. The blast wave hits the armor like a hammer. "Take that, bitches," exhales Bilov, falling to the floor of the fighting compartment. No more strength. Hands hang like whips. The siege continues. Time has lost meaning. No hours, no minutes, only cycles. Flash, shot, reload, Petrov's groan, new disc. The human organism's resource is depleted to 120%. They hold on by a wing and a prayer and hatred. The tank stands immovable, like a cliff against which waves of German infantry break. But water wears away stone, and the stone has 3 rounds left in the pistol clip and 1 disc for the machine gun. The darkness overboard seems endless, dense, tangible. And in this darkness, they are alone. 4 men against an entire army. Help is nowhere to come from. Communications are silent. The antenna was sheared off by shrapnel back at the start of the battle. Only the crackle of static in the headphones reminds them that somewhere there is another world where they aren't shooting. But that world now seems infinitely distant, an unreal dream. Reality is the smell of Petrov's blood and the cold steel of the bolt under fingers. The radio, silent for the last 3 hours, suddenly came alive. Through the crackle of atmospheric discharges and white noise, a voice broke through. Weak, distant, distorted, as if coming from the other world, but human. "Falcon! Falcon, this is Volga. How copy?" Sokolov, losing consciousness from heat and dehydration, perked up. He pressed the headphones to his head so hard it hurt his ears. "I hear you, Volga. I hear you." "Falcon, hold on. We have a jam at the crossing. The bridge is destroyed. Engineers are working, but the mud. Vehicles are getting stuck." The voice on the air trembled. This wasn't a staff officer with his dry orders. This was someone from the rear whose nerves were failing from understanding the catastrophe. "Who are you?" Sokolov shouted into the mic. "Who is at the crossing?" The answer hit harder than a tiger shell. "Medical battalion, Falcon. 300 wounded, serious cases, 2 columns of trucks, and civilians. We're stopped. We need an hour. If the Germans break through..." The airwaves choked with interference. Sokolov slowly lowered the hand with the microphone. In the cramped, stinking fighting compartment hung a silence that was heavier than cast iron. 300 wounded. A crossing 1 kilometer behind their backs. That's not even the rear. That is the direct fire range of a tank gun. The lieutenant imagined this picture with frightening clarity. A broken bridge over a nameless river. A line of old Gaz AA trucks with red crosses on the sides, spinning wheels in greasy clay. Tents scattered in haste. Helpless people on stretchers who can't run, can't shoot, can't even crawl. Doctors in bloodied coats trying to push trucks. If the German armored group passes through this crossroads, in 10 minutes they will be at the crossing. It won't be a battle. It will be a slaughter. Tracks will simply mix people with mud. The hospital will be turned into mince before anyone even realizes what happened. "What is it, Commander?" Petrov asked hoarsely. The mechanic lay on the floor, leaning against the levers. His face was gray, bandages soaked in black blood, but his eyes looked demandingly. Sokolov looked around his crew. Orlov, blinded by soot, wiping inflamed eyes with a dirty rag. Belov, sitting in a fetal position on empty casings, dropping his head on his hands. They were squeezed dry. They did everything they could. Regulations allowed them to consider the mission accomplished. Ammunition expended, enemy equipment destroyed, tank knocked out. By any military logic, they had the right to the last thing. Blow up the machine and try to leave through the forest. But the logic of war just changed. Behind us is a hospital. Sokolov's voice sounded quiet, but in the enclosed space, every word fell heavily, like a stone. A click to the crossing. 300 stretcher cases. Doctors. Women. Belov raised his head. In his eyes, clouded by fatigue, understanding began to emerge. If we withdraw, or croak now, the lieutenant continued, the Jerrys will be there in 15 minutes. He didn't say motherland, Stalin, or duty. Those words here, in sweat-soaked steel, didn't work. Only specifics worked. Concrete people having their bellies ripped open by scalpels in tents right now, hoping that somewhere ahead stands a barrier. The crew was silent. A second. 2. Then happened what is not described in political work manuals. Fatigue, fear, pain from wounds, all this didn't go anywhere, but receded into the background. A reserve generator of will switched on. The meaning of their existence in this iron coffin suddenly became absolutely crystal clear. They aren't here to survive. They are here so that those at the crossing have time to get away. So, we stand, Orlov said. He turned to the site. Movements became calm. Nervous trembling disappeared. We stand to the death. How many shells? Asked Petrov from below. 5 cucumbers, and the disc. Enough, the mechanic nodded. Enough for 5 minutes of combat, and then we'll go with crowbars. Sokolov glued himself to the periscope. The darkness outside turned slightly gray. Dawn was approaching. On the road, 100 yards in front of them, loomed the carcass of the tiger they knocked out. From its engine compartment, thick smoke was still rising, creeping along the ground. Listen to the plan, the lieutenant commanded. The tiger blocks their view. They are afraid to go head-on, think we are still strong. They will go with infantry. We'll filter through the ditches to take us out with grenades, and they'll send the armor around, through the field. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, thinking. Orlov, hold the sector left of the tiger. That's the only place armor can pass. Belov, you're on the hatch. Listen for every rustle. If they climb on the armor, shoot through the slit with the TT. Petrov, how are you? I'm normal, Commander. Machine gun ready, holding the right flank. We use that dead German cat as a shield. While it smokes, they don't really see us. We are a ghost in the hill to them. Fear was gone. Its place was taken by cold, angry determination. It is a strange feeling, when you know exactly the date and place of your death, and this knowledge does not paralyze, but liberates. They had nothing left to lose except time, and time was now measured not in minutes, but in the lives of rescued wounded. Every second they won by holding this cursed crossroads turned into someone's chance for life in the rear. Water would be nice, Belov said dreamily, stroking the breech of the cannon like the withers of a tired horse. We'll drink our fill in the next world, Sokolov grinned. The wells are deep there. The aphorism came out grim, but no one was scared. Death ceased to be an abstraction. It stood nearby, breathing down their necks, but right now the crew of the T-34 asked it to wait in the hallway. They still had work to do. Now the tank became not just an engineering structure. It became a living organism, in which 4 hearts beat in unison with the cooling engine. The crew merged with the machine into a single whole. Steel became their skin, periscopes their eyes, and the 85mm barrel the only argument in a dispute with fate. Sokolov checked the slide of his pistol. Round in the chamber, 7 in the magazine. That's enough not to surrender alive. "Volga, this is Falcon," he whispered into the silent airwaves without pressing the button. "Do your work, brothers. We are holding." Outside in the pre-dawn haze, the roar of engines was heard. The Germans were starting the morning attack. They wanted to get to the crossing, but for this they needed to step over a steel hill and 4 stubborn souls. "Stations," exhaled Sokolov. The last act of the drama began. Dawn comes not with sun, but with a gray, sticky fog that crawls out of the lowlands and envelops the crossroads. Visibility drops to 50 yards. The world narrows to the size of a cloudy spot in the periscope. For Lieutenant Sokolov's crew, this is the last morning. They know this with the same mundane certainty with which they know the engine start procedure. The ammo rack is empty. In the barrel is the last high-explosive shell. 1 shot. 1 period at the end of a sentence the length of a life. "Germans." Orlov's voice is devoid of emotion. He simply states a fact. Silhouettes emerge through the milky veil. This time they aren't hiding. German infantry rises to full height. They walk in a chain, confidently, arrogantly. They know the Russian tank has been silent for an hour. They know the beast is bled dry, and they are coming to finish off the wounded animal. Ahead, clanking tracks, crawls a Stug assault gun. Its low profile is barely visible in the grass, but the short 75mm barrel looks straight at the 34's forehead. "Let them come," whispers Sokolov. Hands lie on the hatch handles, fingers white. We hit point blank. Then grenades. Inside the tank is the silence of a crypt. Petrov went quiet below. His breathing became shallow, wheezing. Belov stands pressed back against the breach, eyes closed. He is praying, but his lips don't move. The Germans are already close, 30 yards. Rolled up sleeves, glint of wet helmets are visible. An officer raises his hand. Now the Stug will strike, and it will all end. Sokolov takes air into his lungs to give the last command. And then the earth shudders. It isn't a tremor from a close explosion, and not the vibration of German engines. It is a deep, low rumble coming from somewhere underground, from the rear. It grows instantly, drowning out the noise of the rain and the clatter of German tracks. It is the sound of a heavy tectonic plate set in motion. The German officer turns around. On his face, visible in the sight, bewilderment is replaced by animal horror. From the fog behind Sokolov's tank, breaking bushes like dry matches, a monster bursts out. Heavy Tank 1S2. 46 tons of cast armor and concentrated power. Its long barrel with a muzzle brake seems endless. The characteristic pike nose of the frontal detail pushes apart the bushes. Behind it, another one, and another. The Heavy Guard's breakthrough tank brigade enters the attack line. The Germans freeze. They see their death before them, embodied in metal. The muzzle brake of the lead 1S2 spews flame. 122 millimeters. The shot of the D-25T cannon isn't just thunder. It is a blow that bursts blood vessels in the eyes. A shell weighing 55 pounds sweeps past the camouflaged 34, dousing it in a hot wave of compressed air. Impact on the Stug, the German self-propelled gun, isn't just hit. It is literally disassembled into molecules. The kinetic energy of the heavy shell rips off the casemate, turning armor steel into shrapnel. The ammunition explosion follows instantly, scattering pieces of metal for dozens of yards. In place of the German machine remains only a smoking crater and a twisted chassis. "Fire!" Sokolov hears a strange, powerful voice on the air, which breaks through even the turned-off radio. The salvo of the tank company merges into a single roar. The forest in front of the crossroads turns into hell. Trees fall, cut down by shrapnel. The earth flies into the sky in black fountains. The German infantry chain disappears. It is simply blown away by a squall of high-explosive explosions and machine gun fire. Those who survived the first salvo run, dropping weapons, but escaping heavy shell fragments is impossible. "Ours," exhales Belov. He slides down the wall to the floor and starts laughing. It is a terrible, hysterical laughter turning into a cough. Tears flow down his dirty face, leaving light tracks on the soot. Heavy tanks pass the hill under which Sokolov's crew is buried. The earth shakes so much it seems the tank will fall apart right now. The IS-2s move relentlessly, like a glacier. Their wide tracks crush German helmets, ammo crates, remains of Hanamags into the mud. Following the armor comes the infantry. Soviet riflemen in wet rain capes, with Mosin rifles and PPSH submachine guns at the ready. There are many of them, hundreds. They run, crouching, flowing around the lonely earthen hill with the .85 caliber barrel sticking out of it, like a river flows around an old stone. Someone from the infantry knocks with a rifle butt on Sokolov's armor. "Anyone alive, Slavs?" Sokolov cannot answer. He has a spasm in his throat. He simply nods to himself, looking at the periscope down which rainwater flows. The tension that kept them toned for the last 24 hours releases instantly, as if a cable was cut. And it is scary. The body suddenly becomes cottony, unliftable. Hands start shaking with such a coarse tremor that fingers miss the pistol guard to put it on safety. Orlov throws himself back, tilting his head. His eyes look at the turret ceiling, but he sees not steel, but the sky. A clear blue sky that isn't here and cannot be. "That's it," he whispers. "That's it." Petrov below emits a long, hoarse groan. He is still alive. He waited. The roar of battle moves west, to where the 9th Army of the Wehrmacht is now turning into a pile of scrap metal under the blows of the Soviet breakthrough. Here, at the crossroads, a deafening silence sets in, broken only by the crackle of burning German equipment and the distant rumble of departing heavy tanks. Sokolov unclasps his fingers with difficulty, releasing the hatch handles. He feels empty, gutted. Nothing is left inside. No fear, no joy, no anger. Only endless, leaden fatigue and the understanding of one simple fact. Death walked past. It touched them with its cold wing, breathed grave cold into their faces, but at the last moment pulled back its hand. He pushes the hatch. The heavy armor plate flips back with a screech. Fresh morning air bursts into the turret. Cold, damp, smelling of ozone and wet pine needles. This smell intoxicates stronger than pure alcohol. Sokolov leans out to his waist. Around is a picture of the apocalypse. Earth pitted with craters, black skeletons of German machines, scattered bodies in field gray. But along the road, past all this horror, the first trucks are already driving. Studebakers with ammunition, trucks with infantry. Life returns to this road. The lieutenant looks back, to where, a kilometer behind the forest, stands the hospital. Smoke from field kitchens rises above the treetops. They are there, alive, drinking tea, bandaging the wounded, cursing the weather. They don't even know that 10 minutes ago their fate hung by a thread the thickness of one tank shot. And in this ignorance lies the highest award for the crew. Sokolov lowers himself back into the tank. "Petrov," he calls quietly. "Hang in there, brother. We'll call the medics now. Everything will be okay now." The mechanic smiles slightly with the corner of his lips. His face is white as paper, but calmness shines in his eyes. He did his job. His machine did not let the enemy pass. The euphoria of victory is a lie from newsreels. Real victory tastes like dirt on the teeth, like ringing in concussed ears, and like the weight of a comrade's body that needs to be dragged through a narrow hatch. But this is life, and it continues. The silence that ensued after the battle has its own weight. It presses on eardrums with a pressure of several atmospheres, creating an illusion of a vacuum. In this silence, one can only hear the red-hot metal cooling and crackling, like a giant beast dying of fever. A Willys jeep of the battalion commander drives up to the crossroads. The car stops abruptly, raising a fan of muddy spray. The battalion commander, a middle-aged major with an earthy face, jumps out onto the road without opening the door. His boots press spent casings into the clay, with which the ground is strewn. He walks toward the hill, which just this morning was simply a dot on the map, and now has become the epicenter of a local catastrophe. The major is a professional. He doesn't look at the landscape. He reads the statistics of the battle written in fire and steel. To the left, the burning skeleton of a heavy Tiger tank. Its turret is twisted to the side, track lies like a black snake in the ditch. To the right, 2 Panzer Kampfwagen 4s turned into a pile of scrap. A little further, 3 armored personnel carriers, of which only wheels and frames remain. 6 units of armored vehicles. Dozens of bodies in dirty gray uniforms, scattered by explosions along the entire perimeter. This is the price of one crossroads. This is the balance sheet of death, settled to 0. But the battalion commander's gaze is riveted to the center of the composition, to tank number 17. What he sees is hard to call a combat vehicle. It is a piece of twisted, burned, war-ravaged metal. Guards Lieutenant Sokolov's tank looks as if it had been in a recycling press. The front fenders are torn off clean by the blast wave. The left track hangs on a wing and a prayer, side skirts turned into rags. On the frontal plate are deep, jagged scars from ricochets in which scale has baked. The layer of paint has disappeared, burned off, leaving naked steel, which is already starting to get covered with a red coating of rust from dampness. No antenna. It was sheared off by shrapnel. Only a pitiful stump remains. Headlights broken. Handrails for infantry twisted into knots. The tank looks like a boxer who stood 12 rounds against a sledgehammer, took all the hits, but didn't fall. The battalion commander walks up close. Heat radiates from the machine, as if from an open furnace. The smell of burnt rubber, diesel fuel, and blood is so thick it takes the breath away. He puts his hand on the armor. It is hot. It vibrates, as if the metal still remembers the blows of the shells. "Hey!" yells the major, banging the handle of his pistol on the turret. "Anyone alive?" The commander's cupola hatch opens, not immediately. One hears the grinding of a jammed mechanism, heavy breathing, swearing. Finally, the lid yields and flips back with a crash. First, a hand appears, black from soot, with knuckles skinned to the meat, shaking. It clings to the edge of the hatch with the stubbornness of a drowning man. Next, a head shows. Lieutenant Sokolov. He does not look like a Red Army officer from a propaganda poster. He looks like a miner who has just been dug out after a collapse in the face. His face is a black mask, on which only the whites of his eyes and red, cracked lips stand out. The headset is unfastened. A thin trickle of dried blood flows from his ear. Sokolov climbs out slowly. Every movement costs him supreme effort. He jumps onto the track, slips, but holds onto the gun barrel. Behind him climb the others. Orlov, blind from smoke, squinting at the gray light of day. Belov, bent double, coughing up black phlegm. They pull out Petrov. The driver-mechanic is unconscious but alive. He is passed carefully, like a crystal vase, into the hands of medics who have rushed up. The bandages on him are black, soaked in oil and blood, but his chest rises and falls. The crew stands before the battalion commander, dirty, deafened, terrible in their inhuman fatigue. They sway in the wind. Their uniforms have turned into oily rags. Sokolov has no shoulder straps. They were torn off, or he cut them off himself so they wouldn't get in the way in the cramped space. The major wants to say something. He has a prepared speech about heroism, about recommendations for medals, about the importance of the held line. But he looks into Sokolov's eyes and understands. Words are superfluous here. Words are sound, and these people are currently on the other side of sound. They saw what isn't described in reports. In the lieutenant's eyes, there is no triumph. There is emptiness. A deep, dark crater in which fear, hope, and joy burned up. Only the instinct of duty performed remains there. The battalion commander silently pulls off his glove. He extends his hand. Sokolov looks at the extended palm for a second, two, as if remembering what this gesture means. Then slowly, with effort, he raises his hand, heavy as lead, covered in a crust of gunpowder soot and mud. The handshake is short and hard, masculine, without unnecessary sentiment. The major's palm drowns in the tanker's wide, calloused palm. It is contact between two worlds, the world of staff maps and the world of burning armor. "Thank you, son," the major says quietly, knowing the lieutenant doesn't hear him. Sokolov reads lips. He doesn't nod. He simply unclenches his lips in an attempt to smile, but the skin on his face is too tight from soot, and only a painful grimace results. Around them is a graveyard of technology. Dead machines created by the best engineers of Europe lie in piles of useless junk. Their flawless optics are broken, their powerful engines are silent, their thick armor is pierced. Iron lost. But people stand. 4 Soviet guys made of flesh and blood, vulnerable to any shard, withstood what Krupp steel did not. The contrast between the mangled, dead metal of tank number 17 and the living, pulsating heart of the crew hits the nerves harder than any explosion. The machine is a consumable. It can burn, break, turn into a colander. But while human will beats inside it, a piece of iron remains a combat unit. The T-34 died as a mechanism, but won as a weapon, because its soul was these 4 half-dead people. Medics carry Petrov away. Orlov and Bielov, supporting each other, trudge toward the medical battalion vehicle. Sokolov lingers for a second. He strokes the cold armor of his tank with his hand. Where the tiger shell left a deep furrow, this is a goodbye. He knows he will never sit at the controls of this 34 again. It will remain here, at this crossroads, a monument to their stubbornness. The lieutenant turns and, limping, walks after his men. There is no lightness in his gait, legs tangle, but his back is straight. The back of a man who didn't bend under the weight of the sky falling to earth. The battalion commander watches them go. Then he takes out a cigarette case, lights up, but the smoke seems tasteless to him after the air these people breathed. The statistics of heroism are simple. 6 destroyed German machines, 1 burned Soviet tank, and 4 saved lives that are worth more than all the technology in the world. The math of war balanced out. The debit met the credit. The crossroads is ours. Present day, Belarus. That very crossroads, where 70-odd years ago the fate of an entire generation was decided, is now rolled in perfect asphalt. It no longer smells of burning and decaying flesh. The air is clean, smells of pine needles and the gasoline of passing cars. Geography remains the same, but the scenery has changed radically. Instead of soaked clay, road markings. Instead of craters, neat ditches. Instead of the roar of artillery, the rustle of tires. The world, paid for at the highest rate, lives its everyday life. To the right of the road, on a concrete pedestal, it stands frozen. Tank T-34-85, hull number 17. For tourists passing by, it is just a monument. Another symbol of the Great Patriotic War, one of thousands scattered throughout Eastern Europe, a state-owned object of cultural heritage covered with a thick layer of cheap green paint, which municipal services renew for every Victory Day. It looks ceremonial, almost toy-like. The barrel is proudly cocked into the sky, road wheels shine with black lacquer, a red star glows on the turret. But if you walk closer, if you ignore this glossy camouflage and touch the cold metal with your hand, you can read the real story. A story written not in textbooks, but burned directly onto the steel at a temperature of thousands of degrees. Paint cannot hide scars. Right here, on the gun mantlet, the metal has a strange, torn structure. Under the layer of enamel, fingers feel a deep furrow, as if a giant plow passed over hardened steel. This is the trace of a ricochet from an 88mm Tiger shell, the point of application of colossal kinetic energy, which should have turned the crew into ash, but went into the sky, leaving this autograph as a keepsake. A little lower, on the frontal detail, a rough, uneven weld seam. This isn't factory welding. This is the work of a field repair brigade in '44, or restorers who assembled the machine from pieces already in peacetime. Here the armor was pierced. Here death burst into the fighting compartment. The tank's tracks are also different. The left belt is native, with the characteristic waffle pattern of links from Kharkov or Nizhny Tagil production. The right one is gathered bit by bit, links of different years of manufacture, some worn to the limit, some look new. This is a mute illustration of the logistics of that battle, when the thrown track was assembled from wreckage, from mud, from what they managed to strip from dead machines. This tank isn't just a museum exhibit. It is material evidence of the breaking point. It stands here not because it was the most powerful machine of that war. It stands here because one day it became real estate. It turned into a concrete pillbox, hammering itself into this earth, and refused to budge when the laws of physics and common sense demanded retreat. A small bus pulls up to the pedestal. People get out. Different people. Elderly, young, children. They carry flowers, carnations, red spots on grey concrete. They lay them on the fenders, where spare tracks and toolboxes once lay. Who are these people? They don't know the technical specifications of the ZIS S-53 cannon. They likely can't tell a high-explosive shell from a sub-caliber one. They are unfamiliar with the feeling when diesel fumes ignite in a confined space. But their existence is a direct result of a ballistic equation solved by Lieutenant Sokolov in June 1944. These are the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those who lay in the tents of the field hospital by the crossing. Those 300 helpless wounded whom the tank crew covered with their armor. The genetic chain was not broken. It continued thanks to the fact that 4 people in an iron box decided that their lives were worth less than the time needed for evacuation. This is simple survival arithmetic of a population. 4 die, or are ready to die, so that 300 survive. 300 survivors give life to thousands of descendants. And here they stand, living proof that the sacrifice was not in vain. They look at the tank, and in their silence, there is more meaning than in any solemn speeches. The wind stirs the wreaths at the base. German cars rush along the road, Mercedes, BMWs. The irony of history. Descendants of those who created tigers and panthers now peacefully drive on Belarusian land, buying gas and timber here. The war is over. Technologies of killing have been replaced by technologies of trade. But tank number 17 continues its watch. It looks with its blind, welded-shut barrel to the west. It is no longer dangerous. Its engine rotted long ago. The gun breech is filled with concrete so no one can shoot. Fuel tanks are dry. It is dead. But its silhouette against the sunset sky still commands respect. It is the silhouette of a predator, frozen before a jump. Angular, functional, devoid of any elegance, created with one goal: to destroy and survive. The story of Sokolov's crew is a reminder of the nature of war, which is often forgotten behind ceremonial gloss. War is not beautiful maneuvers on staff maps. War is dirt, sweat, blood, and grinding metal. It is the moment when technology ceases to be just a mechanism and becomes an extension of human will. Armor is strong not by the thickness of steel. Millimeters matter only in proving ground conditions. In real combat, when shells run out, when optics fail and the engine dies, the only protection remains the spirit of the crew. The 34 on the pedestal is a monument not to designers Koshkin and Morozov, although to them too. It is a monument to engineering defense made of trash and will. A monument to man's ability to turn into steel when steel itself is tired and ready to surrender. The sun sets behind the forest, painting the sky in crimson tones resembling the glow of a distant fire. The shadow of the tank lies on the road like a long black cross. People get on the bus and leave. The tank remains. It will stand here when this asphalt cracks again, when generations and eras change. It is an anchor of memory, an iron nail driven into the map of history that does not allow forgetting the price paid for the silence over this crossroads. One man in the field is a warrior if he is cut from Russian steel. And even when the battle is over, his post is not surrender. He just switched to eternal standby mode. Through layers of paint, through decades, through silence, the truth emerges. As long as this metal stands, the memory lives of how 4 tankers stopped time to give a future to others. Eternal parking. Engine off, crew dismissed.